Welcome to session 45. And first, I apologize. The last two sessions I messed up on the counting. Instead of saying 43 and 44, I said 41 and 42. So, anyway, in any case, this is session 45. And on this same subject, we stay on for this session as excuse me, I think the previous two sessions. Which is basically on the second paragraph of Dao De Jing, and in which we talk about, people have this, I guess, somewhat standard to pass judgment that it's somewhat, widely accepted and followed by majority, if not everyone. And of course, with the standard to judge, we have somewhat better looking, not so good looking, and we have things that people are considered better at comparing to others. But then I guess from the Taoist teaching, what we're really I guess encourage everyone to at least to think about is this good at or better at, does that always, I guess, loyally reflected, along the line over quite a period of time? Here's I guess, one example I would like to, throw it out there and see if you feel the same way. Before, our current, let's say, tenant at the 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue of Washington, D.C., before the guy, I guess, got elected and became the current resident or tenant of the White House. I guess the political trend until then was the Americans, the great majority of Americans got fed up with, that political trend, so far until that day or at that time. So until then, basically, if you wanted to run some American public office, this is just in essence, okay, I'm going to mimic a little bit how people try to get the vote from, statistically, the majority of Americans back then, right? So this is how back then it would go. My fellow Americans, I believe all of you, just as I am, completely fed up by the way the politicians play us in their own games. It is time to put a stop to this game. You need someone like me to go to the Washington, D.C. and start to show the politicians this is no way to have the great America to stay great again. Well, guess what? Be careful what you wish for, because it might just come true. So now, the old political game is no longer the game. The guy got elected, has his own game, and he made his own game rules, right? So those who voted for him, you ain't got nothing to complain about, right? Because just like, well, I don't know if you accept this comparison. At least on the surface, we identify, a new political trend, and supposedly, the key word here is supposedly, a lot of Americans are seeing that their own interests are being addressed that was ignored, before. Remember, I said on surface. So is that completely correct? I would say partially yes, because when the globalization was going really well, guess who actually benefit the most? I would say the conglomerate, those big corporations, and they treated, crazily well, on Wall Street, you know, I'm the guy never put a dime on, security exchange because I don't believe that. And but that doesn't mean I'm in a good stance to criticize that. But I'm just saying, you know, when the point is when you have a standard, right, to determine what is good, what is bad. Well, it really depends on good for whom, right, or bad for whom. By the same token. So if the super rich Americans, or for that matter, the super rich French, super rich, German, super rich Chinese, super rich Japanese, who cares? Super rich people, which obviously I don't know them, so I can't really relate to any of that sort of thing. But for them, something is good. But is that good for you if you are working, the minimum wage? And you're lots of time you work 2 to 3 jobs to stay afloat, to survive. I'm not sure that's the same standard. So when any politician say, my fellow Americans, it sounds really great, but who is the fellow Americans, right? Now, don't get me wrong. I am the one who, used to, or at least I came through that time and suffered from all this classical struggle. But here's the thing. Now, instead of really addressing the problem of the polarization, to find a way, some kind of, I guess, harmony for coexistence, try to, make peace. Now we see that, even extremely more, I guess, prompt and stronger trend going towards even more polarization, heading for the violence. Is that the same standard we're talking? Of course not. So, in the name of the pluralism, that we have all these different ethnic groups in this country, supposed to be a great melting pot, which I do believe. I guess for the generation born in the 90s, their, I guess, general concept greatly impacted by the political correctness. Whereas for my generation, we may or may not see the same way. One thing, for instance, certain racial group, I don't care what that is, but certain racial group get the preferential treatment when it comes to higher education, whereas another, basically with all the credentials, they get denied by the those top institutions, even though they none of them would admit it was a policy. At least we can see the clear trend identified. So is that the same standard we're talking about? This racial equality, this and that. Really? How about statistically, a ratio, basically to indicate, this and that, or, I don't care either way. I mean, if you are relying on the special treatment of, certain preferential, even though that is supposed to be compensation, overcorrection, whatever, but is that fair to other, ethnic groups of the same society? Or is it really a, wise idea in the long term for one nation, one country supposedly to be great, to be the other nations who are also progressing, and racing into the same direction, and you block certain ethnic groups? Who's at the loss? Do you think it's only just the single ethnic group, or is it just overall on the level of a nation? When you look at the basic science, the research, and technological, I mean, for instance, take a look into the Silicon Valley. If you deny, let's say, the Chinese ethnic groups in the top education institutions, but look at the Chinese came from the China People's Republic of China, how many in percentage are filling up Silicon Valley or Seattle or now Austin, right? Do you think the Chinese born raised in this country are the same as the Chinese from People's Republic of China as far as the value goes? I really don't know. So whoever made this policy, I really question the wisdom there. Okay. So now, do I tend to believe there is something of a hidden agenda? Basically just, thinking for the good of certain race? It seemed to indicate that. But I don't know that for sure. I'm just throwing this out, right? Because we're talking about the standard. So now, standard, good, better, bad, worse, for whom, right? That is what I'm questioning on that. So let's go back to the good ad. So we were talking about the politicians, quote unquote, because the current resident of White House, referring to all the presidents of the United States as the politician, and technically correctly, he's no politician at all, right? So when, as an elected person of the United States, what is he good at? And is that something we perceive, we anticipate as good for all of the Americans? Really? Think about it. If the president of the United States addressing all the national, political agenda, and always come back and ended up with, election related and a lot of things. It's all about, let's say, it is very, very good or very, very bad. Two extremes, nothing in between, really. So this is what? Reflection of the polarization of American politics. Because, hey, there's nothing in between. Either it's very, very good or very, very bad. For who, though, right? So let's see. The American economy has been, doing well until a certain point. So now the new political game is a blaming game. So we all blame on the Chinese, right? The Chinese could have stopped the virus, and I don't want to name that virus. Whatever it is a virus, right? So being Chinese American, you blame on the Chinese. Okay, I don't really care. But is that fair, right? Who cares about fair? The whole objective is to basically get reelected, and that's the blame game. If it's not Chinese, maybe the Russians. If not the Russians, maybe the Germans, or maybe the French. You've got to have something, some entity, some collective institution, whatever to blame, right? So blame on the previous, American presidents. Blame on, the other political parties or the governors of states where, they all reflect certain party lines of another political parties, until we have the people coming out of the same political party as our, president started to make some comment in the open and in public. So now what? Do we see politics? Do we see the politics of the new game? Made up with the new rule by the new president that, apparently elected by American people of certain groups, in combination. I just personally think it's going to be very interesting to watch if it's going to be the re-election, of, our dear sitting president, or is it going to be somebody else? And we all know who that somebody else is. Now, the question is, do all the Americans, and I'm talking about all Americans, doesn't matter what race and what color. A lot of people just, hesitate because of the political correctness, hesitate to use the word color. But let's say yellow, okay? I don't care, yellow, okay? or red or black or white or brown, whatever. Okay, that's just a label. It doesn't matter. I mean, I can call myself, American Chinese, or I can call myself Chinaman. It doesn't matter. But hey, if we want to play, by the rule of political correctness, let's just call the African American, the Latin American, the Chinese American. But can we have everybody agree on the same, standard of what's good, what's bad? Here's something. Let's talk about the Asian Americans. And the Asian Americans born and raised in this country, and the Asian born and raised in Asian countries, right? Do you think the Koreans and the Japanese could get along really famously well? We see the little trade war between them, right? That's suggesting something. Or when you throw the Chinese in, do you think the Chinese really love the Japanese or the Koreans? So my question is, this political correctness, am I allowed to like or dislike, for whatever ignorant reasons of any racial group, or I'm not allowed? For me, if I have my own reason, personal reason, right or wrong, good or bad, simply different, okay? I do not feel comfortable to social with some other specific groups or all other groups, or even I don't even social with my own group. I'm talking about the racial group or ethnic group. How bad is that, right? Like I said, the Germans, people from the German from Hamburg, they have certain regards, not all of them, but some of them, about the Bavarians, right? And here in America, people born and raised in Manhattan, or they have certain, I guess, reason to be very proud. And there's this saying, like, if a guy's from Texas, you don't have to ask him; he will tell you. That just tell you how proud we are as a Texan, right? Is that so wrong? I don't know about. I really don't know about that. But if you have this basically against the other groups, and you openly make your comments towards them, make them feeling uncomfortable, now I think that ought to be illegal. But if you're white or black or Latin or American Native Indian, you don't like me because I'm Asian, or specifically because I'm Chinese, you don't want to social with me, you don't invite me into your social circle, do I really get offended? No. Because I just might have the same reason not to invite you to my parties if I had a reason to throw any parties at all. But being Taoist, I'm basically just trying to avoid all that city crowd and that traffic and all that. Just I'm a loner. Is that so wrong? As long as I don't feel feel offended by certain comments by others, because after all, what you're saying about me only reflect what you are seeing in me, and that only tells me about you. What level are you at? So it doesn't really matter to me. I am a Chinaman, and I study, whatever that makes me comfortable, but I try not to make you uncomfortable. But if you come to try something, guess what? I'm also a Texan. I got guns to, protect myself. Now that's legal, right? If you don't want to mingle with me, it's absolutely okay. I don't get offended, and I don't really have to invite you to social with me either. But I have my rights. This is the part I feel really proud to be a Texan and American. Of course, if you ask people in California, the same Americans of same ethnic group as mine, we don't politically identify, the same thought about, being armed for defending or the home defense, right? But what really happens right now on the street, all the violence, does that, basically, do we count on the police to help us? Well, That's exactly where all this riots start, right? So, okay, let's say we cannot really count on the police. And then what? We just let them mess us up completely? No. This is where my Texan thing comes out, okay? So if you mess with me with violence, as Taoist as I am, I have my blood, and that can boil too. So I don't care who you are. Basically, you leave me alone, I'll leave you alone. And as far as I'm concerned, that's the political correctness I can, I guess, kind of follow. But once again, the whole point here is, what is the standard for everybody? Do we have one? I doubt it. So this is why we're going back to the Taoist saying about the universal laws are not to be reduced down for the specific, because here are the specific, all these different rules get you confused, right? So we all heard about this political correctness, and American laws actually are here to enforce all that. But then, I'm not going to repeat myself. Just take a look at the, the video clips, on the internet, whatever's available, capturing all these things. So in the name of equality, in the name of justice, and you have the violence against other people, I don't care what race, what color, it doesn't matter to me. That's just not the way it should go for a harmonious society today. And with, all these rhetorics out there, the left wing, the right wing, whatever, I really just simply don't, I guess, side with any of them. As far as I'm concerned, I leave you alone, you ought to leave me alone. I totally believe you have the right to regard whatever, ethnic groups or whatever other groups. Do you think that's the only discrimination out there? What about this, the social equality and economic, equality, basically derived from or associated with the, unfair redistribution of wealth? Do we see that? Or are we just seeing, basically whatever the color, the race? I believe the well-educated people, okay, with the open mind, the mindset, I don't really see that much difference in racial or ethnic or the color of skins. I don't. In fact, if you, let's look at this. I'm going to be just a little bit open today, right? So if you compare the Chinese born race in this country from the Chinese from China, or you compare the American Jews to the Jew from Israel, you can see the differences in value. Why? Because the melting pot of the USA, the education system, actually does a pretty good job to put the value, the core value of the American, I guess, somewhat culture, contemporary culture, quite differently. If you compare the generation of Americans born and raised in the 1990s to those who were born and raised in 1950s and 60s and 70s and 80s, you can see the total difference, okay? So I guess if you, you were raised in a different society, of course, there's some similarities in culture, characteristics between the Chinese from China or the Jews from Israel and born and raised in America. There's some similarities, but overall, I think the value, the core value, separate them, even though they came from the same ethnic groups. Good, bad, or different? I think that, I guess, observing the noise on the social media in China, they do have a lot of opinions very negatively on the American Chinese and vice versa. There are certain I guess people in America, they have certain opinions about Chinese, except for they couldn't, tell the difference between the ethnic American Chinese and the Chinese from China. And then, by the same token, except for I don't really know anything, whatever is going on in Israel, or and of course, we're not talking about the conservative, I guess, Jew, uh, and then the liberal, or I think one person told me use the word reformed Jew. Okay, but it doesn't matter. I'm just telling you that values are actually different. So if you're ignorant about this, color of skin or ethnic group, and you cannot tell the difference of Americans born and raised, or at least educated or whatever, this is what I say, and I think a lot of people that I talk to about this tend to agree with me. Whether you are an American is not really about whether you have a citizenship legally, or you were born, raised in this country, or you're an immigrant. It's really about your value. How much value do you share, with the American value? So what is American value? Of course, generations of educations always, make the differences, which so make the value changes, but still there is streamline, the baseline there about American value. So if you share the value, I think you are an American, even though you may or may not be American citizen, or you may or may not be someone like a born an American, right? So if you are ignorant about this and you think you're the one representing the real America, well, that only puts you in the category of stupidity, because you have the right by constitutional, U.S. Constitution, you have the constitutional right to remain stupid. What is stupid and what is ignorant? Now I sound a little more, I guess, you may not feel so comfortable, but this is not something I think very critical. I was trying to stay out of the political thing, but I guess I can, because what's going on out there, right? The difference between ignorance and stupidity is that ignorant people, they did not choose to be ignorant, and they could have a quite an open mind and to be enlightened, and they actually would enjoy that, and they look forward to have such opportunities to be enlightened, right? And to have even wider open mind, a broader view for a bigger picture. And the people are stupid because they reject any opportunity to be enlightened, and they rather to maintain with their constitutional right to basically remain stupid. Okay, that's fine. By choice, if that make you happy, that make you happy. As long as you don't violate the rights of other people, right? So this is the whole thing as far as I can perceive. What is democracy? What is freedom? Okay, when you have this freedom way out of proportion at the cost of other people's, freedom, that's not right. That's not really what I, believe is the real democracy, because that is just way out of, proportion. And when you say life matters, I want to, correct that. It's not like there's certain groups life really matter, but it should be all lives, all the lives matter in any society. Okay, I came out and came away from a society at the worst time of that society, where we were all the same racial group, and the discrimination was basically on daily basis. And that's why I don't feel discrimination here, racially or not racially, until now. So the polarization is coming up, but I don't think our sitting president invented that. He just came in, basically by riding, the tide. So he did not invent that. But I guess he could contribute to the widespread, and a even stronger trend of this polarization, which is something really worries me. I'm extremely concerned, and this is why, against my own rule, not to get involved in the politics, at least not openly in public, but in this session, I talk about it, and I don't know if my view is going to be shared. You know, I guess in somewhat agreement by a group out there, or maybe everybody just have their own standard to judge and be judged, which is exactly the point, you know, of this whole second paragraph about what is good at and what is better, what is worse, and hey, good at what? We have the I guess honor and opportunity to observe what is truth revealed by the sitting president of White House, right? Or sorry, the sitting resident of the White House and the president of the United States. Now we get to see. Do you like what you see? I'm really, for the most part, I don't think I do. Okay, so of course, do I have a good, I guess, option, like as somebody really better to replace this one? I don't know about that. So where's the, I guess, American democracy? Am I the only one feeling this way? Are there a lot of disappointed Americans who simply just did not want to flip a coin between the two candidates? Somehow the money and the connection pushed them to the front for us to choose. I don't know about that. But if the American democracy really works, I would really like to see the, I guess, the valid candidates come out to become the real choice between these two. Frankly, I don't like either one. Politically, I think given the, I guess, the exposures that I had, the first place I landed in this country was a military school. Basically, well, I'm not going to talk about myself, but in any case, I guess what I'm trying to say here is the standard to judge and be judged with or against basically really depends on who you are, what you are, where you sit, and I don't see a universal standard good for everybody, and certainly not over a long time. And I'll leave you with that. Until next session, ciao.